anyone can endure hardship, right? Like as human beings, I think that we have the ability just to like put our heads down and fight through a hard time. But to persevere is something else entirely. I think it's whenever we sort of put our heads down and fight through it, but we have joy in doing it, right? It's very different. And the joy is directed very specifically towards the idea that in this suffering, in this hardship, that there's purpose. And I might not understand it now, but dadgummit, I'm going to be joyous. Like this is a time to rejoice. And that for me is what long suffering means.
Years ago, Eric had a show with another artist here, Johnny Thurston. I liked Eric's work with Johnny, and Eric kept getting better and better and better, and eventually I bought some of Eric's works. But we knew that because of our similar aesthetic, but also because of our faith, our shared faith, Christian faith, that we wanted to have a bigger conversation between the faith and the art itself. We sat down and started talking, and long-suffering became the theme. The primary aspect of the long-suffering project is to create a book pairing Eric's photographs and my poems, and a very nice book, a handmade book.
I think if you want to teach anybody about long-suffering, maybe making a book would be one of the best ways to do it, where like every single part of the process you are involved 100%.
And initially we actually thought that we would farm out the binding of it. We realized it was pretty expensive. Eric has some training in bookmaking, and the actual prototype that Eric made was so beautiful. Why don't we make this even more long-suffering and have you make these books?
It involves things that people don't consider, like having to order glue and finding this really strange balance between applying glue quickly and getting it adhered to the thing it needs to be adhered to, right? So there's this like quick process, but then all of a sudden now you've got to wait, right? So like you can't keep moving forward. There needs to be this really quick process, and then there needs to be this point of waiting. So I think that's very specific to bookmaking. Like for instance, I timed myself stitching the book the other day, and it took me 1 hour to stitch one book, right? And so if, we're making 40 of these, there's 40 hours just on one particular part of the process. And I really think that continues to emphasize this idea of long suffering. I think I'm experiencing that firsthand in making the book, right? And being hands-on with it, and the fact that after you do it 40 times, you kind of start to get a little weary and run down, and you think, holy cow, I have so much to do, and I have to do it 40 more times again, right? But then I think keeping this idea in the back of my head that like there is purpose for this, like there's meaning behind this, and that me struggling through this is, it's got meaning. It's important. I have to do it.
I'd like to see what other artists are doing in their own realm and say, wow, how can I bring that over to what I'm doing? Especially with this long-suffering project, to say, well, what's the space in between as well? If I bring Eric's photographs next to my poems, what happens there? How are we in conversation with our own work? And then all of a sudden, how are my poems changing to sort of match up to the strengths of his work? And then maybe also seeing, like, is his photography going to change at all, and his manipulation of the photograph according to what I'm presenting?
We were introduced to each other's work sort of early on in my BFA career, and I think we met at various like dinner parties and things like that, and we'd talk, and I was really taken aback by how in this artistic world, John was willing to stay true to his faith, which was something I was actually struggling with whenever I began college, mostly because I was taking a lot of art and philosophy classes. I mean, you do that and all of a sudden you're questioning, whether you exist and all of that sort of shenanigans. But where he didn't claim to know a lot, there were certain things that he was very certain of, right? And I thought that was really profound, actually. After I graduated, I moved off and did some things abroad, and then came back and immediately John was like, we've got to collaborate. Like, I've been working on these poems for a long time, and I think there are resonances between the stuff that I've been thinking about and the things that you've been thinking about. We were seeing, I think, that perseverance that I was talking about earlier in both of our works. Whenever I say I was struggling earlier on in my college career with belief and things like that, for me that was that long suffering. I wasn't sure where to go, and so art was this great way for me to figure it out. And I think John picked up on that, right? And that's part of John's work, I think, a lot as well. He deals with these topics such as death and West Texas, and there's kind of like an aridness to the poetry in the same way that there's kind of an aridness to some of my images. And there's like this idea of drought, but this idea of longing for more, of knowing that there's something out there that we desire and that we need. Man, once we tapped into that, we just knew that we had to collaborate.
Well, Eric and I don't have much money. I'm a poet. He's a young artist. We wanted to use really nice products. We wanted to have a kind of long-suffering use of letterpress. And so that in and of itself was going to require some money. But we also wanted to pay Eric because he's doing most of the work, the physical labor. And so we said, well, what's the minimum Eric could make, just below probably minimum wage? That was a few $1,000s. And so we went well beyond that, so Eric would get paid actually fairly. It was a nice surprise. I thought we'd probably make $12,000, and I think we made closer to 14, which was really good. Our goal was only 8. We gave ourselves till October in case we run into snags, and we probably will. But we'd like to get a bulk of the work done over the summer. As soon as we finished the project a few weeks ago, Eric got to work, and he is already ordering paper, ordering the plates, and it's well underway.
Well, it's sort of a catch-22, I think, and it is exciting to see this much support, and more support than we, or at least I, had imagined, right? Because sure, I value my work and I value the things that I do, but wow, not $13,000 worth of value. Like, I've never sort of placed a financial number on it like that. And so that part of it is really great. But now there's this huge responsibility that I need to give back what I've been given.